All right, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you once again for joining the House of Shiloh Ministries on God's beautiful day of the week. It's Holy Shabbat. We thank you so much for taking the time on this day to sit with us and learn and to continue in the lesson, Now What? What to do after you've learned the truth. It's sponsored by the House of Shiloh Ministries and presented by yours truly, Brother Andrew Bradley. We are still in the sections that just teach upon the truth. And then we're going to get to the now what. But the truth is so big and so important that I wanted to make sure that this lesson covers it. So we're going to continue from what we were talking about in the previous lesson, part 10, previous section of the lesson, part 10, and just do a quick summary of what we discussed in part 9. So let's go ahead and continue to the next slide. All right, so we got the summary so far for this section here. We know that the Jews are Japhetic and are 90% Khazari, Turkic Mongols. All right? The state of Israel wasn't formed until 1948, and the original name of the land prior to 1948 was Palestine, and before that it was considered Canaan, which we see here. This Canaan was established by the son of Ham. All right? The original Semitic people were brown or dark skin, or brown or dark brown skin, and the ancient Israelites had the Y haplogroup E1B1A. The Y haplogroup E1B1A is found throughout West and Southwest Africa, and the people of this region were taken as slaves. The Y haplogroup E1B1A is found throughout the Americas, which this is also supported by the curses of Deuteronomy 28. But with all of that, is there any doubt who the true Hebrews are? Now, if we think there are, let's go to the next slide. We'll talk on that.
Okay.
So maybe you're still not convinced. Let's look at some more modern history to tell us what the Hebrews looked at. Before we talk about this, I want to make something that I did not add to the lesson, but I want people to understand. The Hebrews of Spain and Portugal are very important to the history of the Americas, the colonialism of America, the slave trade. The reason is, those two countries is where the Inquisition started. And in those two countries, they were the first to do the slave trade. The United Kingdom or England came in afterwards. Much of the slaves, the first and early slaves, came from Spain and Portugal. If they didn't come directly from Spain and Portugal, they would ship all of their black citizens to the coast of Africa to be sold into slaves. So it's important for us to know that what we're about to read on is in reference to Spain and Portugal because it sounds distant from Africa. But it's a huge, huge importance because many of those black Hebrews in this region of the world, Spain and Portugal, were indeed shipped to Africa or shipped to the land of America, the American colonial islands and so forth, South America and all that. So it's very important for us to understand it. All right? So let's take a look at the first book. It's called Travels in Holland, the United Provinces, England, Scotland, and Ireland, written 1634 to 1635 by Sir William Brereton. All right? On page 61, in this section of the book, he's talking about the Portuguese Hebrews. And then he tells you on page 21 that, and he's referencing the men of the Hebrew women. They're men, most black, and full of hair, and insatiably given unto women. But he's telling you that the Portuguese Hebrew is dark complected. And this is a book that was written almost 400 years ago. The source of that book is in archive.org. We got this shortcut here for you. It's important that you understand that I purposely picked an old resource so we could see how see how things were before things got so whitewashed, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We will have these shortcuts available in the comments for you as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Mm-hmm.
Any questions so far?
I have one question, and you may or may not have that readily available. So if not, just you can just tell me. But I was wondering, with during the Inquisition, would this having anything to do with the Hebrews being the Portuguese Hebrews being faced with the choice of denying or accepting Christianity? Their
That's,
go,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, the diaspora or the diaspora from Spain, from Italy, right, from Portuguese to going into West Africa, right, with this great push of them being moved out of the country have anything to do with them failing to accept Christianity? Does it have anything to do with that?
Yes, that's the name of that was the root behind the Inquisition. The Inquisition started mainly because you had a large population of blacks who were not Christian and would not become Christian. And they were disruptive with the Roman authority, the Roman Catholic Church. They got so despondent with them that they were like, they got to either convert or go. And at the time, the Roman Catholic Church found this to be an excellent opportunity because they were the ones that were in power. Spain and Portugal had their kings, but the church was in power.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew that by them failing to convert, they could twist their own law that will allow them to deport them and then force them into slavery, which would be a form of slavery not according to Torah,
Mm-hmm.
but according to the Western mindset, which was forced labor without pay.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew that this would circumvent their own laws because they could not legally, according to their own laws, enslave Africans at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But by deporting these people to Africa and then selling them directly into the colonial slave trade, they circumvented that law. But that law was later changed as well, where Africans were filed because the money was just too great. They were making too much money. So yes, the Inquisition was a convert to Christianity or die. And then they still sold them into slavery. And at the same time, took their children from them. They had no choice. If the child was 3 years or younger, they were taken and put into Christian households.
Mm-hmm.
When you do stuff like that, you literally, in one generation, wipe out the culture completely.
Mm-hmm.
There is no historical help for that child. That child will not learn his language, his art, his religion, or faith. Nothing. He will lose it all in one generation. What's the reason behind it. If they were teenagers, they were forced. It depends on 14 or younger, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
They were forced to be educated, or 13 or younger, re-educated. If they were older than that, they were sold into slavery, directly into slavery. The re-educated would be sold as well sooner or later, but they'll be raised and re-educated. So the Spanish and Portuguese Inquisition was absolutely brutal.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell anybody, if they want to learn more about that, please watch Reclaiming the Throne documents. The docu-series Reclaiming the Throne. It's on Tubi. It's free. It is jaw-dropping. Absolutely jaw-dropping.
It sure is. I think it's done
right,
by Rebirth of a Nation. I think that's who it's done by, Rebirth of a Nation.
Yeah, it's Rebirth. It's Rebirth of the Nation. Right. And when I tell you, it's one of the most polished and well-made series you could possibly watch. It is of high quality. The research is fantastic. The amount that you can learn from this docuseries You will be cheating yourself if you don't watch it. I have mentioned this series to many people, and they just said, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna watch it." I never hear back from them because they don't watch it. To me, it could change your life. It's that impactful.
This would change every quote Christian person's life if they were to watch it, be they Hebrew or not. They will understand a great deal about the Christian faith. They would understand the roots and origins of the Christian faith. And it would cause them, it would cause them to pause and to begin to rethink, to begin to dig into, how did I come to believe what I believe? How did I get here? I think they would begin to backtrack, and then what they find would be so overwhelmingly shocking for them. They'll be stunned at some point and wouldn't even know what to do. They'll have to sit and ponder on it for a minute. So it's important for Hebrew or non-Hebrew to watch that series, to understand how the Christian faith that is today, where it came from. Now, people can say, well, things have changed, but I want to make this last comment. In the eyes of the Most High, the roots and origin of a matter makes all the difference in the world. Where it began makes all the difference in the world. If today you put up a temple of Baal and then have the image of Baal across the front of the temple, but put the name Christian, Yah would not accept it, even though all the worship that's going on in there is being led by a Christian pastor, and you have Christian believers in there, but you have brought in another mixture too. So again, it's important for anyone that is of the Christian faith, Hebrew or not Hebrew, to go and watch that series, Reclaiming the Throne, that's on Tubi. It's free. Take your time and look at it, and then Selah. Thank you, Brother Andrew.
And that is so true. I in my past Christian life, I went to a church, the Church of God in Christ. It's a Pentecostal church that's in my hometown. And they bought this church from the Greek Orthodox faith. But they didn't repurpose or just remove what was done by them, because these churches, the Orthodox, will be very elaborate. When you go into the church, you see these elaborate stained glass windows and paintings on the ceilings and all of this other stuff. Even though now this is a pastor who believes in quote unquote holiness, the fact that the paganism and the imagery is still in that church is not pleasing to the Most High.
It's true.
It's not pleasing.
It's true.
So, anybody else?
One last comment. In the scriptures, it says that we should not have any resemblance of evil. And in Yah's eyes, those images are evil. So they don't belong there. They don't belong in the temple of the Most High.
Yep, that's true. All right. Let's move to the next. We got another book here. It's the Critical Review, or the Annals of Literature, by a Society of Gentlemen, volume 57, London, printed for A. Hamilton in 1783. On page 141, it is stated that King John II in 1492 spelled the Black Portuguese Hebrews to the island of St. Thomas and African colonies, who were part of the plantations of the Caribbean. Of Africa. Not all, because these came straight from Portugal. Let me read exactly how he says it here. It says Prince Henry's colonies were enlarged by his successors. King John II in 1492 expelled all the Jews to the island of St. Thomas, which had been discovered in 1471. into other Portuguese settlements on the continent of Africa. That's what we just spoke on, right?
Right.
They took the Portuguese and the Spaniards, sent their slaves to straight into the slave trade or to the coast of Africa. And from these banished Jews, the Black Portuguese, as they are called, and the Jews in Luango, who are despised even by the very Negroes, are descended. And there's some history there because a lot of native Africans did not like the Hebrews.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know that through history and research. They were not well pleased with the Hebrews because they stayed to themselves. And because of that, there was a sense of arrogance, they thought, and entitlement. So the native African did not like the Hebrew, nor did they thought the Hebrew should belong. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the native Africans sold Hebrew people into colonial slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
Into the slave trade.
True.
So yes, you can say blacks were selling blacks, but Africans weren't selling Africans. Africans were selling the Hebrews,
mm-hmm.
the Negroes.
Mm-hmm.
But they were first called Negro in Spain and Portugal. So everybody follow on that one? Any questions with that one?
No, just a comment.
Yes, I think I wanted to also say that you had two separate sets of families. The Hamite and the Shemites. So the Hamites were the ones in Africa that were selling the Shemites, which are the chosen ones to the Abraham,
Mm-hmm.
that were dressed like priests. We dressed in priestly silk robes. We carried ourselves in a very organized, dignified manner. We walked off the law of Torah. We did not sacrifice our beliefs in order to mix with the other nations. So we were a peculiar people back then, and we are peculiar people now.
Mm-hmm.
We were hated because we are the chosen seed of Abraham, the firstborn son of YAHUAH, and we acted as such. And when we stopped acting as such, it got us into a lot of trouble. It got us into the situation that we're in today, actually. So we were peculiar people. We dressed in a peculiar way. We were not seen on the Shabbat. We didn't eat the same food that the Hamites ate. The Shemites were different.
We didn't dress the way they dressed.
No.
We didn't practice some of their community practices. For example, we didn't marry outside.
Mm-hmm.
There's in some African tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very strict. And there's some African tribes where they greet a stranger with their wife. They let the stranger come into their wife as a form of greeting. That's stuff that the Hamite cultures did, but Hebrews would not do that. They would not do that. So, yes, very peculiar indeed. And because of that, we weren't well liked. And that's led to our downfall. You just can't, like I said, you can't run from the Most High. You can't run. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, that's all.
All right, let's move to the next one. We got another book. This is The Source of History in the Pentateuch. All right, 1882 by Samuel C. Bartlett, D.D. On page 118, he describes the Portugal Hebrews again. And I keep putting this. The reason why we could find historical records of the Portuguese and the Spaniard Hebrews is because they were part of a country that documented things very well. You won't find a historical documentation of what happened in Africa because the Hebrews had no reason to do it. They didn't consider themselves a commodity for something to make money off of. So they didn't have a necessity to track it. But the Portuguese, the Spaniards, and the English, the Dutch, the French, the Germans, all those who were involved in some of the atrocities associated with the African and the Hebrew, they kept records because of the money that was involved. And thus this record and this history comes up. But if we have black Hebrews in Portugal and Spain, and there was no question who they were, you better believe that they came from somewhere. They didn't just sprout up in Spain and Portugal. And their oral traditions is well known to tell you that most of the Spaniard and Portuguese Hebrews were from the tribe of Judah, exiled to Spain and Portugal under the rule of Babylon during Babylonian exile. Okay? But that's other history that we can talk about some other time. Let me read to you what this book says. It says, in regard to the human race, it has been shown abundantly and historically that each of the external differences often ceases to be characteristics. Thus, the black color is found not only in individuals as the black Hebrews of Portugal, but in the tribe as the Bakari on the Red Sea, whose hair and characteristics are perfectly Semitic. Did you hear that? Do you understand what I just read? I just told you that an author from Portugal has declared that the black Portuguese and the Bakaris that are also found in the Red Sea, near the Red Sea, which is near the Promised Land, right? It's where the land of the covenant is. Says that they had perfectly Semitic features. So it was known to this world back then, before it was all whitewashed, that the original region where the Hebrews come from were Semitic, and in Semitic meaning dark. Also, darker complexions, black complexions. I don't have the book. It doesn't come to mind real quick. But the book that I'm thinking of, and I'll try to find it, states how he find it curious of how so many white, and he calls it Jews, have come up, but they do not line up with the known Semitic features that come from the region where the Hebrews are at. So historically, history does show, without a doubt, that the original Semitic people were of dark skin, brown to dark brown. Any questions with this one?
No. We're good.
All right, let's look at another one. In this book, The History of the Jews, from the earliest times to the present day, by Professor H. Grace, Volume 4, London, 1892. On page 695, Pope Pius V, who authorized the transatlantic slave trade, see there? Catholic Pope, is stated on the top of this page as treating the Hebrews as the cursed children of Ham. Now, if the Hebrews are the cursed children of Ham, or treated as the cursed children of Ham, they couldn't have been white people.
Good point.
All right, and that's the point. The reason I bring this up in this book is because you can't compare a white people to Ham. It's just not going to do that. And we know that they try to say that Ham is cursed because of Noah cursing Canaan, or but that had nothing to do with the Semitic line at all. And he didn't say they were Ham because he called them Jews. So that meant that he understood that they were different, but he treated them the same. And it gets quite detailed. I want to see if there's anything else that I thought. It says here that he followed his predecessor in the cruelty of what he was taught. So there's a well-documented point here in this book that he really did treat the Hebrews terribly, terribly. And this dated, this was in the 1600s with this behavior, even though this book was written in 1892. Okay. Any questions or adds to this one?
No, we're good.
All right, let's do one more book. All right, Benedict de Spinoza, Tractatus Theologico Politicus. Tractatus Politicus, London, 1895. I probably sounded terrible, but I apologize. I'm not the best when it comes to stuff like this.
Wow.
Benedict de Spinoza is a Hebrew. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't say if he's a white Hebrew or a black, but on page, that would be page 19, it looks like. On the introduction at the top of the page, Benedict describes a fellow Hebrew who was black with curly hair like the Portuguese Hebrew. And he said he was of middle size. He had good features in his face, the skin somewhat black curled hair, long eyebrows, and of the same color, so that one might easily know by his looks that he was descended from the Portuguese Jews or the Portuguese Hebrews. So you see that again. You see quite a bit of Portugal and Spain, being mentioned, or Portugal, but they go hand in hand because during the Inquisition, they ended up working together to commit the atrocities of the Inquisition. All right, so to me, Portugal and Spain go hand in hand. All right, but unknowingly, many black people in the Americas descended, like I said, from Spain and Portugal. They just don't realize. They do not realize. All right, everybody follow. We've got all this history in your head now.
Can I make a comment on this, on Benedict de Spinoza? Where it says Benedict de Spinoza is a Hebrew, although it does not indicate a particular color for him. Whether it doesn't, it's not saying whether he's white or black. I want to make a comment about that. If he says he's a Hebrew, he has no choice but to be black. I want to explain my statement, though. If he were to say he's a white Hebrew, I would say, no, you are a white convert, but you're still not Hebrew. You have converted to the lifestyle of the Hebrew people. You have done that, but it doesn't make you a Hebrew. A current example of that is, again, if I were to go to the Tibetan mountains, and well, I'm female, but if I were a male, go to the Tibetan mountains and become a monk, right? Do I become their nationality just because I chose to live their lifestyle? No, I am a convert. So I would say to anyone who is questioning whether Benedict de Spinoza is a dark-skinned Hebrew or not, unequivocally, the answer is he is a dark-skinned Hebrew. He is not white. He can't be white. He can be white and be a convert, but he cannot be white and be Hebrew. And then they can say, well, one of his parents can be white. They could have white father and black mother, or the opposite, white mother and black father. If that is true, then he's still not white. So either way it goes, there is no white Hebrew. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yes, ma'am. I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. Anybody else?
I just want to make mention to the audience that when you look up the name, then it gives the notes on Google. You will find that it does say that he was a Portuguese, who was his parents. They were trying to force his parents to become Christianity, but he continued to practice Judaism, which is Hebrewism. But the picture has been, it appears to be has been whitewashed, and of course they're showing the thing of a white race.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the images, just to know that this is not correct.
Well, thank you for bringing that up because. Go ahead, please.
No, go right ahead. Thank you.
I was going to say thank you for bringing that up because when you Google, and I suppose the image of who Yahushua is supposed to look like, it's a white guy.
Same way.
So it's the same type of whitewashing. You see the same thing with the long straight hair and the white skin. What happened to the description in the Bible where it says that his hair is woolly hair, curly hair? What happened to that? It's in Revelations. And it talks about his skin. His skin is the color of copper or brass, which is a brown, a dark brown. So what happened to that? So these images are whitewashed to perpetuate a lie that has begun, and they want to continue that lie. So they use these images to enforce the lie that they're telling. Brother Dawid has something to say.
Also, in school, they show you that this guy is also well known for rejecting Christianity at the time, because he said that he didn't believe, and at that time Christianity had a lot of contradictions, so that's what he's well known for as well.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's it, Brother Andrew. Thank you.
Okay, no, very good. Thank you. Good adding. Good adding. Well, I want to talk about two more sources, and these are more modern. Look at the next page to get you thinking. If you think that, that's some old stuff. Let's take a look at the Compact Bible Dictionary, Zondervan.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Mm-hmm.
This dictionary is written back, or first brought fully together in 1993. The history is actually older, but the full version is 1993. Here's the definition of ham. You'll find it in this book. I have this copy of myself. All right? The youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years after the flood, or before the flood, I'm sorry, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. If Ham is the progenitor of the dark races, then how are the Negroes not of Ham? If they're not of Ham, then they must be Semitic, because it's established that Japheth was the progenitor of the people of the islands, Europe, North Asia, and so on. And those are fair-skinned. So by default, we know who Negroes are. We know that Negroes are brown, dark brown. So by default, we know they have to be of Semitic descendants. Now, this brings back the importance of the Spain and Portugal Hebrew, because one, in America, we are, historically we've been called Negroes for hundreds of years. Hundreds and hundreds of years. But we weren't called Negro here first. The first mentioning of Negro is in Spain and Portugal. And the word Negro was in reference to the black Hebrews. So that terminology continued with our ancestors as they got sold in the colonies for slave labor. So it all lines up. It all lines up. Does this make sense to everyone?
Yes.
All right, good, good. So let's move to the next slide then. Minister White find this one familiar. So this was Gamal Abdel Nasser Hussein. He was the president of Egypt from 54 to 70. Died suddenly from, I believe, a heart attack or something. During a television interview, President Gamal made the statement you see pictured. See, even the Muslim world knows who the true Hebrews are.
Mm-hmm.
He says this: the Jews will never be able to live here in peace because they left here black but came back white.
Mm-hmm.
And he was bold to say this in his time on national TV on an interview. But he was right. How are you going to come back to different people and then expect to say that this is yours when you obviously don't belong?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously don't belong.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any questions with that?
Comment. I just want you to.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want our audience to know that when he said the Jews will never be able to live here in peace, notice he said Jews. He didn't say anything about the 12 tribes of Israel. He didn't say YAHUAH. He didn't say anything about the other tribes. He says, no, the ones that are here that are called themselves Jews are the Jewish ones. They will never be able to live here in peace. It's them. So I wanted to highlight that he's pointing out that there are imposters in the land. There are imposters in the land. They are claiming to be something that they're not. Okay, thank you, Brother Andrew.
That is indeed true. He didn't specify. He just to who's supposed to be there. He was being specific of who should not be there. All right. Anybody else?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's move to the next slide, please. So history has many more details to share, but that's for you to seek out. It just will be so much here. There are many more details that can be learned through DNA as well. This lesson doesn't cover it all. Its purpose here was to ensure that you can say with full confidence that the ones who claim to be Hebrews in Israel today are imposters, plain and simple. But, if you want a thorough understanding of the kingdom of Yah and who the kingdom belongs to, please visit this shortcut here. It's a YouTube lesson that the ministry has for the House of Shiloh, and it's called, and the lesson is a thorough lesson on the kingdom of Yah, the kingdom come. You can learn a lot in that lesson. All right? So with the understanding of who the real Israel are, we can now focus on another truth. If the original people were falsely represented, was salvation truthfully taught as well? So in the next section, we will discuss how those who took the scriptures for themselves never taught what salvation truly is. The next section will be focused on salvation. All right?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody has any conclusions or any adds?
No. We're good.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next section. Salvation. All right. Okay, let's move to the next slide. So we have proven the following truths. Torah is eternal. The covenants are eternal.
Mm-hmm.
Israel is E1B1A, which is found mostly in Africa and its descendants. So we must now prove that what we have been taught by the Western world, Europe and U.S., for example, has been a great error. And I'm talking about how we've been taught with the scriptures. If they hid the original people, they played around with the original scriptures, which has misguided us and ensured inclusion on a lot of stuff that was never written for them. So it is time for us to re-examine the scriptures used for salvation and acquire understanding from the actual source languages. So we're going to do like a recap on our lessons that we've done so far in this on salvation that we've done in previous lessons, so we can put the truths all together, and this is one of the big ones. All right. So let's go to the next slide.
Oh, Brother Andrew, can I please say, not only is Torah eternal, not only are the covenants eternal, but Israel is eternal. You probably say, how can I say that? How can you have an eternal covenant for a people that's not eternal? That won't make any sense. That if the covenant that's for the people is eternal, then the people have to be eternal to be able to continue to be a part of that covenant. So Torah is eternal, the covenant is eternal, and Israel, this is is eternal. So there is no replacing Israel. There is no replacement theology. There's no replacing Israel with the church, or there is no replacing Israel with other spiritual believers from various nations around the world, and then say that that whole conglomerate makes up Israel. Israel remains to be Israel, and Israel is eternal. They are an eternal people to go with their eternal covenant, to go with their eternal law. All three of those are together. Thank you, Brother Andrew.
That's very true. I knew that's what you were going to say. I was over here muted while you talked, but I said Israel's eternal too. It's so true. I mean, that's a very good point. And the reason Minister White says this is because it's very, very popularized in Western culture, especially in America, of the replacement theology. You don't find it everywhere. You won't find it in Asia or in parts of Europe or Africa that Israel has been replaced. But in Western Europe and America, they teach that quite thoroughly, to the point where they'll tell you all is spiritually Israel. Those who believe in the Messiah. And somehow his people have been replaced. But there's plenty of scripture. In this lesson, we'll have that in here later on, where Israel is eternal and no one can replace them. Not a single person. All right? So, if no one else, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So who is salvation for has never been properly defined in our current state, in the religion that we have today. In this lesson, we will not go into the full details of who salvation is for, because that's a lesson all by itself. Instead, we will focus on quickly pointing to the truth while using the most impactful scriptures to get you in the right direction. Now, for a full detailed study of who salvation is for, please visit the House of Shiloh, where you can see who salvation is for. All right? We will have these links in the description of the video as well. So when you're done with this video and you want to learn more, you can go to this link and take a look. And it's salvation, understanding who salvation is for. Very detailed. It's a very detailed lesson. Okay? All right. All right, let's get a show on the road. First, we need to understand what we're saved from. And this is simplified. There's more to it. But it's important for you to understand the following scripture so you can understand who it impacts. All right? So sin, of course, we will say sin, we're saved from sin. But to understand what sin is, or understand what sin, we need to understand how it is defined. Now, the church knows 1 John 3 and 4. Everybody knows this. Whosoever committed sin transgresses also Torah, or the law, they'll say. For sin is the transgression of Torah, or the law. So sin is disobedience to Yah's Torah. I do not understand it to this day how the church explains this away. I can tell you what my church did. They never taught on this verse. Ever. And I was in a very devout Pentecostal church. Very devout church. And they never taught on this verse. They're not taught to even focus on what sin is. You know, it's just the definition that the church will give you will be like, oh, well, doing things that displease, as they will say, God. The question is, what is this thing? Well, sin. What is sin? They don't really teach their people. All right? In Romans 6:23, for the wages of sin is death, but the gift of Elohim is eternal life through YAHUAH HaMashiach, our Adonai. So sin is disobeying Torah, and the disobeying Torah, the price of that is a death. Not just a physical death, but a spiritual death and an eternal state, too. And that's in that lesson with detail, in that lesson we spoke on. So, understanding these two verses, salvation saves you from the price of disobedience to Torah and death. Now, again, I want to just point out, there's more to what salvation does for the Hebrew. But what's important in this lesson is the most important point is the price of sin. So we're going to just focus on that. All right, so we're clear. 1 John 3 and 4, transgression of the law of sin. 6 and 23, and the price of it is death. All right.
Question, please. The last bullet.
Yes, ma'am.
It says salvation saves you from the price of disobedience to Torah, and then you have death right after that. Are you saying that salvation saves you from death? Because that's the price of disobedience. Is that
not necessarily the physical death?
Yeah, I don't mean that.
For the sake of length, because there's more to this. I don't go into too much depth. The death that they're talking about, all men, unless the end comes and the new world comes and the kingdom comes and our new bodies come, all flesh dies, right? So we receive the first death. That's normal. But the price of death, this sin, the price of sin is death. This death is a spiritual death. It's a tormenting death. It's a permanent disconnection from the Most High. And this death results in, quote unquote, the being in the torment and the pit of hell, that's been broadened and widened for those who do disobey the Most High. This death is the second death. All flesh receives the first, unless the end comes and saves us from it. And then the second death is a spiritual death, a tormenting death as well, because you'll be permanently disconnected from the Most High. Does that answer your question, Minister?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You are welcome. You're welcome. And for the audience, I'm telling you, the lesson that we speak on, who is salvation for, will answer all those type of questions. It's for the sake of trying to keep the audience focused. I don't add too much of it because, like I said, it's a lesson all by itself. All right?
Okay.
Nobody else will move to the next slide. Oh, we're looking on time here. We're looking good. Okay. All right. Since sin was disobedience to Torah, what people were delivered the Torah then? So, because you can't disobey something if you never had it, right? So we know that death from disobeying the law is the price, right? Is the price of disobeying it. But did the world have the law, or did a certain people? Leviticus 26:46. These are the statutes and judgments and laws, I purposely kept that in there, which YAHUAH made between him and the children of Israel in Mount Sinai by the hand of Moses. Deuteronomy 4:1. Now therefore hearken, O Israel, unto the statutes and unto the judgments which I teach you, for to do them, that ye may live and go in to possess the land which YAHUAH Elohim of your fathers giveth you. So we see that Israel was given laws, statutes, judgments of the Most High. No other people.
Mm-hmm.
No other people. All right? Everybody follow me?
Yes.
All right, let's continue to the next slide. Just to show you that even the New Testament says this, Paul says in Romans 9:3-4, for I could wish that myself were accursed for Mashiach, for my brethren, my kinsmen according to the flesh, who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoption and the glory and the covenants and the giving of Torah and the service of Elohim and the promises.
Mm-hmm.
That excludes everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else. Okay? Mm-hmm. So we know who it was given to. And then Paul also made sure you understood that without the law, without Torah, sin cannot be defined. So the nations that did not have the law could not define what sin is, nor were they aware of what sin was, because they had no way of knowing it. Romans 7:7. What shall we say then? Is Torah sin? Elohim forbid. Nay, I had not known sin but by Torah. For I had not known lust, except Torah had said, thou shalt not covet. And this agrees with 1 John 3:4. So what I'm trying to get you to understand is this. Sin is transgression of Torah, and death, the second death results from. That only a certain people had it, and if it wasn't for them having it, they wouldn't know what sin would be. So those who never had the Torah had no idea what sin was. Not according to the standards of Yah, because it's in his Torah that defines. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
All right. So let's continue our thinking on the next page. So we see that salvation is being delivered from the press of disobedience to Torah, which is death, the second death. The Torah was given to no other people but Israel, and only Israel received YAHUAH's statutes and his judgments. Why? Because they were the only ones who were delivered his Torah. And we see that says so in Psalms 147:19-20. He showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. He has not dealt so with any nation. And as for his judgments, they have not known them. Praise ye YAHUAH. So one of the things people would quickly say, well, Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed by his judgment. But the word judgment here is different. It's associated with Torah. They were judged indeed, but what we see in Psalms is related to his Torah. So judgment is mishpat. It's a verdict pronounced judicially, especially a sentence or formal decree of divine law, which is Torah. And that's the Strong's definition. And the Brown Driver Briggs is a decision made in case of the law, Torah. All right, everybody follow?
Yes.
Now, I believe Minister White may have something to say on this one.
Which one?
Oh, you don't? Okay, I was just anticipating. I just anticipated it, that's all. Because when you think about Sodom and Gomorrah, why was Sodom and Gomorrah judged? Yeah, they had great sin in their city walls, but you know what? I would highly doubt if they were the only ones that were behaving the way they were. Could it be that they mistreated or did something to his people?
Absolutely. It's not just could it be, but absolutely. And you can read that in the Apocrypha books, right? And the things that they did to them were unseemingly. They were unbecoming, right? They were unbecoming the way they handled the men that would come to their cities, and a demonstration of how they would handle the men can be found when you read the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, when the two angelic men entered the city. Lot recognized who they were, and he bowed to them, and the men of Sodom recognized them as newcomers and wanted those angels to bow to them, a different type of bowing. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So those who were sitting in dark, Sodom and Gomorrah, could not see that those two men were from the kingdom of light. They couldn't see the truth. So they wanted to do things that were not right to them. So that's how they treat the people, that the newcomers. That's how they come there. As long as they're doing it to each other, Yah's not bothering them. But when the children of the Most High are there, are traveled through, are passed through, according to some of the other apocryphal books, and the things that they do to them was wrong. So Yah put a stop to that.
That's why I said what I said. I figured if I said it the way I said it, you'll get the hint. Yes, that's true. So there's more to the story than what the King James provides, or most of our English translations provide. The Apocrypha gives additional background. But nevertheless, the judgments that Yah has for his people are strictly based upon the Torah. Being in line with the Torah, being in obedience or disobedience. So that is clear. Anybody else?
And one more thing. This theme is easily proven because you can see misbehaviors in other nations. Yah's not bothering them. As long as they're not bothering his children, they're not touching the children of the people of Israel, Yah's not bothering them with their wickedness and what they're doing. You don't see, or you don't hear about Yah's judgments going down into the pygmy land and judging them because they're cannibalistic, right? You don't. He's not bothering them. They don't come out of their territory to bother his people. He's not bothering them right now either. So that's another proof that Sodom and Gomorrah were mishandling some of the people of the Most High Yah that would travel through. And the Father says no more of that.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
I agree. That's a good example. Anybody else? Mm-hmm. So let's do some critical thinking. So the previous slides were to help you understand who were sinning, and that's Israel. Mm-hmm. So think of it on the following here. If Torah defines sin, and Israel has Torah, who sinned? Who sinned or disobeyed against the Most High? That should be how it should say. Mm-hmm. Can a people who do not have Torah be held accountable to Torah? If the scriptures were written by Hebrews, who would be the audience? Would a scripture that was written 2,800 years ago, 2,700 years ago, you think I would? Moshe had the foresight in writing the first 5 to say, "Oh, and this is going to be for the East Asian, Chinese, Korean, Russian, European." He didn't write like that, and it's obvious when you read the text. So it was written to his people. Mm-hmm. We're not taught to think like this in the church. Mm-hmm. Think of it this way: as a child, you are not held accountable for something you didn't know. This same approach is with Torah. And I'll give an example. Torah says you don't eat shellfish. You do not eat shellfish. Mm-hmm. So I came to a seafaring people who never heard of Torah, and I saw their diet of clams and various shellfish, and I accused them of sinning, disobeying Torah. Can you imagine their reaction? I tell them that they're doing something they've been doing for 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 3,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know that's a sin, according to Torah. They would look at me like I'm crazy.
So who's for?
Because it doesn't apply to them. It never applied to them.
Mm-hmm.
Thus, the only people who are held accountable for disobeying Torah are the ones who were delivered what is right or wrong, which is Torah.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Right.
Does that follow? Does these make sense, this line of thinking?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's why it's important for the church to separate the old and new. Because when you separate the old from the new, you eliminate Torah and its connection to righteousness. So now you could define righteousness based upon anything, whatever you decide.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to use the original text. That's why the church can't define what sin is. They can't define what righteous is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's look at one more slide here.
Okay.
So, understanding the basic definition of salvation, there's definitely more on it. We can now move to whom salvation is for. All right? So, we got Matthew 1:20 and 21. But while he taught on these things, behold, the angel of YAHUAH appeared unto him in a dream, saying, Joseph, thou son of David, fear not to take unto thee Mary thy wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Ruach HaKodesh, and she shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Yahusha, for he shall save his people from their sin. He was born for that purpose. It does not read that he came to save all. And does this contradict? We're going to discuss this point later on in the lesson, but one of the things I want to talk about at this screen is that Scripture does not contradict. And if there is a contradiction, it's because it was added by the Roman Catholic Church. And we'll talk more as we go about in our lesson. But what's most important here to understand is that, one, it clearly states in Matthew, in multiple spots in Matthew, what his purpose was for. He didn't twist his words when he said these things. All right?
Mm-hmm.
And it should be clear to the audience. Anybody want to add to this?
I'd just like to highlight where you have in red, you have it highlighted in red. What it doesn't say there is that he came to save the world from their sins. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that he came to save everyone from their sins. He came with a specific purpose in mind. He said, I came to save my people from their sins. So if you find any other scriptures that contradict that, or that appears to contradict that, drill down into the meaning. And you'll find that the problem is comprehension, not contradiction. You understand what I'm saying? It will be comprehension, understanding what's really being said. Okay. Thank you, Brother Andrew.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I agree. Well, I believe we're at an hour now, so we're going to end part 10 here. I believe this is a good spot. We'll continue next Shabbat on part 11, where we'll discuss what Messiah's purpose was and make it clear. I believe we'll make it very clear. So we thank the audience for joining the House of Shiloh Ministries. We've been blessed by you being here. We encourage you to look at videos and other lessons that we have as well. I believe they will add to your understanding. This lesson has a lot, but it brings together much of what we've taught on in the past. So please visit the House of Shiloh YouTube channel, which will be with some of the links that you have, and the House of Shiloh Ministry website as well, that has all our videos as well on there. So thank you once again, and I hope you have a wonderful remaining Shabbat. Shalom, everyone.
Shalom, everyone.